As I mentioned, yeah, John Yobin, who's Mido, the young sort of idolizing executive who is just sort of completely enamored by it. I thought she was brilliant. She really sort
Oh,
of jumped out at me, and
I had a bit of a crush on her. I'm going to be
yeah,
honest.
and I was
Yeah.
just like, what have I seen her in?
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit.
Okay, so another film that I did want to talk about that is out in Hong Kong cinemas right now is Cobweb. Now, that is not the American horror movie that came out earlier this year starring Lizzie Kaplan called Cobweb. This is the Korean period film industry drama, comedy, farce, melodrama, sort of period piece from Kim Jee-Woon, starring Song Kang-Ho, among others. Song Kang-Ho, obviously, now, if not already, the most famous Korean actor.
I know who he is. I know who he is.
Well, even more than you know who he is, you can say his name correctly. So yes, yeah, the star of Parasite, of course, and many, many other films. Okay, so
and
Kim Ji
and Broker.
Yes,
one of my favorite movies last year.
There was, yes, you liked it more than I did.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that film.
It's clearly had a lasting impression on you.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a little foreshadowing here. I enjoyed Broker more than I enjoyed Cobweb.
I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is Cobweb? Cobweb is because it's a far more difficult entry point, really. It is set in the 1970s. Song Kang-ho plays Kim Ki-yeol, who is a sort of celebrated film director who has been around for a while, and he's widely respected. But there's almost a suggestion that he's past his prime, and that he's becoming sort of self-indulgent, overindulgent, whatever. This is Korea in the 1970s, so it's still during the kind of sort of military authoritarian dictatorship where there is very, very heavy censorship, and everything that is going into production in the Korean film industry has to be pre-approved by the state.
Safe to say, K-pop and K-drama did not manifest in Korea in the 70s.
They did not. Not. However, there was cinema, and we'll get into that shortly. And director Kim has done rather well for himself. However, his most recent film, which is a sort of psychosexual melodrama about sort of adultery and crazy female characters, and one of whom has a sort of crippling fear of spiders. It's called Cobweb, and it is in the can. It's done already. He wants to go back in and reshoot the ending.
Yeah,
he says he's not happy with it. He wants to completely change the ending, and then it will become his masterpiece. This obviously causes all kinds of problems, not least for Chairwoman Baek, played by Jang Young-nam, who is head of the studio, because it will need to get pre-approved, and there's no way that it will get sort of reapproved by the censors, and there's no way that will happen. And he's like, "Oh, we'll be fine. We'll just get all the cast back together, and we'll shoot it for a day or two." And hilarious hijinks ensue. Essentially, you get it kind of takes on the form of one of these sort of behind the scenes backstage farces, almost like Noises Off or something like that, where you get the actors in, and you've got, while Chairwoman Baek is out of town on a trip to Tokyo, he's like, right, we're going to do it all really, really quickly, and we're going to get everybody back in the studio with the help of the kind of the junior producer, who I think she's great. Her character.
I think she's my favorite character in this, next to Song Kang-ho.
Sure, and not least her jacket. That kind of brown leather jacket thing that she wears is just phenomenal. And it's just costume can really work because it's so eye-catching. She's obviously the very cool young executive with aspirations to become an actress herself.
Yeah, I love how she gives him like the go ahead, like, this is amazing. I've read it. Go for it. Just do it. And that was one of the things I enjoyed about this film, James, is the passion of an artist to have his vision established, to despite the odds. I'm going to, there's a bit of a madness to his character, to director
Sure.
Kim's character, which anybody who's been involved in the creative process, you can kind of really start to get a tunnel vision, and you've got to see this vision through. And even if, it costs you some relationships and costs you some, you're going to do this. And so there was definitely parts of this film that I thought were done really well. And
yeah, I mean, Song Kang-ho's character, director Kim, he has a touch of the tortured genius about
that's
him,
it.
so.
Yeah.
But it's also been pushed to a kind of sort of absurd level where arguably what he's doing is completely unnecessary. And that you never get the impression, or at least I didn't, and that the film believes he's doing the right thing by going back and tinkering with his masterpiece.
Well, and he really reveals that because he lives under the shadow that everyone feels that the great movie that he did and the screenplay that went with it was written by the director that he'd worked with, who died tragically, and that he hadn't wrote this.
Well, and isn't he also the husband of the chairwoman of the studio? Wasn't it her?
Yes.
Which is how she inherited the studio.
Right.
I think.
And I think that's how it works. But I think
so, yeah.
But you're left with a question. This is a spoiler show. You're left with a question of did he or did he not steal it? And then it's revealed at the end, yeah, he did steal it. And so a lot of his insecurities that kind of rile up in this. I mean, even at the beginning when he's kind of being mocked by some folk in the little cafe. They're saying,
but the
you're
critics.
washed
It's a
up.
group of critics, isn't it?
Critics,
having dinner.
And they're saying, you didn't really write that. He's like, I did write it. I did. And you're thinking, thou doth protest too much. And so at the end, it's going to reveal that, no, he did not write this.
Right. And that he is sort of living under the shadow of this former filmmaker called Shin, I believe, played by Jung Woo-sung, who's a really big actor as well, who died, in a fire. And then there's a fire in this movie too towards the climax, where they have to. There's a sequence that gets out of hand where they have to set the set on fire, and there are certain people trapped in certain rooms off stage that might end in tragedy. But you get the impression that Kim Jee-Woon, the director here, has poured something of his own insecurities into all of this as well. He is a director. He's kind of the last of the big three Korean directors that we have talked about on this show, who kind of really broke out as Korean cinema broke out internationally in the early 2000s. So you have Bong Joon-ho, of course, and you have Park Chan-wook, who did Old Boy and The Handmaiden and movies like that, and then you have Kim Ji-woon, who's just as prolific. And he's one of those ones who's harder to pin down because he seems far more versatile, far more willing to try different genres. And so his best films are all over the map. He's got A Tale of Two Sisters, which is an absolutely fantastic kind of gothic horror, supernatural horror movie, which I've mentioned to you, I think, in the past is something that we might cover. He's also done one of the coolest sort of action revenge thrillers called A Bittersweet Life, starring Lee Byung-hun.
Don't know.
And he's done sort of gangster movies. More recently, he's done sort of Japanese occupation spy thrillers, like Age of Shadows with Song Kang-ho. He's not, so he's done all of these kind of different movies. And so this is another departure for him, into new territory. And you get the impression that he's using this as a little bit of sort of self-administered therapy, if you like, to get out of some of his own insecurities. Now, there also apparently are very strong parallels between the fictional character of director Kim and a real sort of legendary filmmaker in Korea called Kim Ji-young, whose most famous film is arguably the big great Korean movie from the early
60s,
called The Housemaid, which has been remade not too long ago. Now his leading lady of choice in a lot of his movies in like the 60s, and he did a lot of this kind of sort of psychosexual melodrama kind of stuff about sort of young tempestuous sexually motivated women at a time when the family structure and dynamic had to be preserved by the censors above all else, and so he was really kind of needling the censors with these kind of modern women and all of this kind of stuff. His leading lady of choice was Youn Yuh-jung, who won the Oscar a couple of years ago. Remember, old Korean lady who won Best Supporting Actress a couple of years ago for Minari. She was in all of his movies back in like the 60s and 70s. She was really like his muse, his Gong Li, if you like, sort of to Zhang Yimou or something like that. And I've only seen one or two of those, and I've seen The Housemaid, and there's a few of them. I just want to do a quick plug, actually, while we're talking about this, because the Korean Film Archive has a YouTube channel where they are not only restoring their movies, but they're also just putting them all up for free on their YouTube channel with English subtitles. And there's a whole load of great stuff on there, and I should have prepared this and got the page open ahead of time. Korean classic film. Or it's just at Korean Film is the channel on YouTube, and there's a whole load of really great stuff on there. So that's all well worth checking out. And I came out of Cobweb just going, oh man, I need to watch more of those old movies on that YouTube channel, because it really kind of stoked the fires of those kind of like completely overwrought, visually super stylized melodramas from a sort of a bygone era that this movie gives you just enough of a sort of a tease of what they would be like.
There's melodrama mixed with a lot of farce in this film.
For sure, yes.
And I enjoyed that. I mean, I enjoyed the farce element. I thought there was some legitimate funny moments in this film that and I love the creative process. I love any movie that's about making movies. There's a great tradition in cinema of films about making films, and going Ed Wood being one of my favorites. And
absolutely.
In fact, we need to review Ed Wood. That would be that is one of my favorite films. That is one of my most rewatchable. Tim Burton. This is just one of the best.
I think it's probably Tim Burton's best movie, actually.
I would say either that or Big Fish are my favorites. I really enjoyed Big Fish, but I think I probably would tip the scale towards Ed Wood. Ed Wood is just Johnny Depp at his pinnacle.
Absolutely.
Before he kind of fell
before he became a parody of himself.
That's it. Unfortunately, Captain Jack both brought him into the stratosphere, and it kind of derailed his career by and large. And it's unfortunate.
It broke him.
But Ed Wood, you got Martin Landau too, and he got a very well-deserved supporting Oscar for that role as Bela Lugosi,
beating out Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
Which is where you get that famous shot of Samuel L. Jackson going, shit, when he doesn't win. When everyone else is going, oh, well done. He's just going, shit. Anyway, we digress. So it was a really kind of sort of mixed bag. But I mean that in a kind of positive way. I think, yes, there are elements of melodrama. There are elements of sort of a historical drama about a very specific period in Korean history when things weren't great and life wasn't easy. And particularly if you were an artist, you were under all kinds of pressure, above and beyond sort of the normal pressures of making an expensive movie. It was very funny, particularly all the stuff involving sort of the young prima donna actress Yu Rim, who was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be off making my Korean dramas," and then you find out she's pregnant, and all of that kind of stuff was, I thought, very funny. And then the movie that he's making as well, just evokes all of those old sort of 60s Korean movies, which I really need to watch more of.
I love that. My images of Korea are either rolled up in the Korean War, and so there's a lot of poverty and destitution, or as somebody who came out here in the 90s, and it was one of the 4 Asian tigers, and it was a modern metropolis. And it was great for me to kind of get a little peephole into that transitional time that Korea was in the 70s, where you can see in this where it was not yet the Asian tiger. There was heavy censorship of the arts. There was kind of a heaviness that seemed to hang over the set that I don't think we would see in subsequent years. And yet they obviously were quite a way removed from the Korean War and some of the ravages of that. And so this is one of the first times I've got to see Korea in the 70s and what maybe Korea would look like in, having grown up in the 70s myself, 70s and 80s, and seeing the contrasts between an America of the 70s and a Korea of the 70s.
Yeah, no, it's very different. I mean, kind of like Taiwan in that regard. The 80s was this incredibly sort of tumultuous decade where everything changed, huge regime change, democracy was instituted, and people were able to sort of shrug off decades of authoritarianism and really sort of express themselves for the first time, speak openly about their experiences for the first time. And so
don't say that so loud, though. Don't say that so loud.
I'll be very careful. But yeah, so it is interesting. I mean, the 70s is still a period that Korean cinema likes to explore. So there have been a few films I've seen set during that period, but it's always sort of us against the system. And it's always about sort of pushing the little man down. And so I thought that this did it, but did it in quite sort of an artful, fun way where it's able to have a good time at the same time.
What did you make of that ending, though, with everybody up trapped in the spider webs?
Well, it's within the film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is within the film.
They come back, and and this is sort of the ending that he wanted, right?
Oh, right.
I suppose. It's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? I think it's it's underscoring the fact.
I'm glad you were thinking the same way. I'm trying to think, am I missing something here?
Oh, I'm sure there is some great sort of metaphor to it all, but I think it's also just also suggesting that that yes, he's ruined his movie. And he's made an absolutely sort of ridiculous ending to something that was otherwise sort of pretty high quality. But if I gave it a moment's more thought, I'm sure there is some sort of maybe it's just about the frustrations of the artistic process, that you're always going to be left tied up in this unachievable quest for artistic perfection. Blah 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 blah. I don't know.
How many cobwebs out of 5 would you give it?
I liked it quite a lot, I have to be honest. Did I like it more than Broker? I'm not going to put those two together because they're very, very different movie. But I liked it. I did appreciate all the different things that were going on. Performances were great. Song Kang-Ho, always great. Yeah. But as I mentioned, Jeon Yo-bin, who's Mido, the young sort of idolizing executive who is just sort of completely enamored by it. I thought she was brilliant. She really sort of jumped out at me, and
I had a bit of a crush on her. I'm going to be honest.
And I was just like, what have I seen her in? And I looked her up, and it turns out I've actually seen her in a bunch of other stuff. She's been around for a little while now, and so but she's definitely sort of on my radar now. I thought she was fantastic. So I'm going to give it 4, which is probably overly generous, but I don't do halves, and 3 is not enough.
Yeah,
three feels it's like it's not going to attract any attention, and I want to sort of put a little.
We're in the same ballpark, and because I can give half, I felt the same way. I want to give it more than 3, but I'm not ready to go 4. It's a 3.5 for me. I enjoyed it.
Excellent.
It didn't knock it out of the park, but it was an enjoyable, well-made film about making films, which I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for.
And it does tempt me. Not only you need to watch some more Kim Ji-yoon movies. We have talked about doing Tale of Two Sisters. I think A Bittersweet Life you'd get a real kick out of as well. But maybe even try an old Kim Ki-young movie. Let me see, because as I said, there's a whole stash of stuff on this YouTube channel. So it's very easy to find, and I'm gonna have a look to see what Kim Ki-young movies are on there, because there might be one starring Youn Yuh-jung. I feel like I'm saying her name wrong, but I haven't looked it up. Might just be a fascinating little interlude as part of our Asian classics.
Sounds good.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. You're